Doctor Who fans, welcome back to AfterBuzz TV. We're talking about the Doctor Who finale tonight, the season 11 finale. Can you believe it's already here? I can't. That's right. We're talking about the Battle of Ranskoor Av Kolos. Ranskoor Av Kolos. I may have pronounced that entirely wrong. We'll never know. But let's try to find out on tonight's Doctor Who After Show.
You're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Whovians! So let that music sink in.
Yeah.
Sink it in. It's the finale. Finale. Welcome back. How y'all feeling tonight?
I'm good.
The music's pumping, so I felt like I had to do like a rock star, like yeah. Oh boy. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Zach Wilson. We've got Xia Anderson here. We've got Dave Child here.
Hi.
Adrian
Dave.
Snow, unfortunately, had some emergency stuff come up. She had to go take care of it. Send her your love, and I yell at her for her thoughts, I guess.
Yeah.
On the finale, because we want to know what Adrian thought. Unfortunately, she just couldn't be here tonight. Miss Adrian Snow on Twitter. But let's just dive right in and start talking about this finale. Which, as I was saying in the cold open, which was only a halfway a gag, the Battle of Ranskoor of Kolos is the title of this episode.
Yeah.
I genuinely don't know if I pronounced it correctly or not. Like, not a gag. I'm doing my best.
I'm going to say yes, because I don't know how else I would say it.
Yeah, it's Ranskoor Av Kolos.
Yeah.
Everyone knows a Ranskoor Av Kolos.
Yeah.
It just
You got
flows
it,
off
Zach.
your tongue.
Yeah. So I have a lot of thoughts on this episode. And chat, I want you to chime in along with us. Tell us if you
Please.
agree. Tell us if you disagree with how we feel. I have a lot of thoughts, but first I want to get... let's start with Dave. Far end of the
Okay.
table. It's usually ladies first, but I'm going to say Dave first. Dave's
Dave's
first.
I feel like
I'm okay with that.
I muscle my way to the first most of the times. The stuff I liked about it, the stuff that I think there was kind of a nice bookending sense in this episode. At first I kind of groaned when I saw Tim Shaw, and then I was like, okay, I kind of like.
I called this.
It's
You're
very
like,
easy. And if you remember last week, I was like, oh God, I hope not. But I do have to say it kind of makes sense because they tried to keep this season contained. So what are you going to do? You're going to introduce a villain and then have him come back. Even though I kind of think Tim Shaw is kind of just a freak of a week kind of villain, they did something in this episode that I did kind of like, which is bring back a theme that has been running through the entire season that we haven't talked about as much as we've talked about the theme of family. And they brought back the theme of misplaced faith and religious extremism, which has been a running theme throughout the entire season in an interesting way, and not necessarily religious extremism, but like a belief that is kind of extreme and a belief system that is kind of wrong but keeps people going. Most of the villains have been coming from that.
It's true. Like, faith
perspective.
in one thing or another has played a giant part in this season. Even the Not Amazon episode.
Kablam.
We were dealing... Yeah, kablam. It's more fun to call them Not Amazon.
I don't know.
I just like saying kablam.
But even in that, you had characters who were so subscribed to this company and this world, and they were talking with it is a sort of faith to believe that your corporate overlords have your best interest at heart.
Also taken down by a domestic terrorist who was essentially had his own system of beliefs, which felt like everyone needed to be killed in order for this lesson to be taught. Even the future racist from the Rosa Parks episode had a system of belief that he was running on, which was future racism.
Yeah, it definitely seems like it also causes just extremism on either side of whatever it is. It's the belief causes extreme behavior. And that's sort of, I feel like, what the extremism is about. It's not necessarily extremism in the relationship. I'm thinking of the last episode of faith. It's more leading to extremist behaviors, and then from there, all hell breaks loose.
Yeah. And it's playing off of the idea of, I think what we're seeing a lot in nowadays is a lot of partisan divides over very big beliefs that are sometimes people take both sides of those beliefs like too hardcore and they don't see the people in between. And I think that's kind of what they're touching upon.
Yeah.
I like
Xia,
that.
so what did you think of tonight's finale?
It was not my favorite. To me, it didn't feel like a finale. I was hoping for a bit more in that aspect. I was definitely a little bit disappointed to see Tim Shaw, but I was less disappointed to see Tim Shaw than I was to see how they brought him down and how ridiculously easy it was. And I know I'll get into it. I mean, we'll get into it. So that was disappointing. I was like, all right, really? There were a couple of moments and again, this was another one where I feel like Yaz felt super left out. And there was all these really nice moments between Graham and Ryan.
Poor Yaz.
I'm feeling like she's an unnecessary character at this point. I don't want to feel that way. I like her. It's the way they did it throughout the entire season.
You're not wrong, and we're going to delve more into that. We're going to talk about we're going to talk about the plotline. We will go more into the themes that were in this episode as we talk about it and break it all down. So stick around for all that. And we got Who's Who coming up. We're going to talk about some of the actors and people that popped up in this episode. But as far as my thoughts, I feel similarly to you, Xia. This episode left me wanting in a big way. The plot of this episode, which for me, a lot of my favorite Doctor Who stories are built around fun plot lines and stories. And while the themes in this episode were really strong, and they did tie up a lot of things that we've been building over the season, and I like the idea of Tim Shaw coming back it sort of reminds me of what we've seen with superhero movies and comics a lot recently, where we finally started to be there are consequences for when you do things. She saves this guy by sending him back or sending him through this teleport instead of letting him just drop to his death. She saves him, sends him somewhere. Doesn't know where. That has consequences. And now we're seeing the consequences of what the Doctor has done.
Yeah.
In that. But what happens from there with the introduction of the Ux people and their power set and how the technology that Tim Shaw had and combined with theirs, and it can condense these planets, and then we wrap that up all practically right after we find it all out. Felt like classic Moffat storytelling, and even as a fan of some of his seasons, I don't mean that in a necessarily positive way. It reminds me of the episode with the Matt Smith episode, right before the 50th. I can't remember the name of the episode now, but where we go to where his graveyard,
right,
and we see his time stream, and we're introduced to all of these moving parts and stories and concepts in the Doctor Who universe that we've never heard before, but the Doctor knows all about and goes into at length, and then we break those rules, as soon as we learned about them, we can't possibly do this, and then we do it. And that's so that we're with these condensed planets. That's how I felt. You introduce this concept just to undo it.
There's also this episode's kind of filled with it, and I'm on the same page as you guys. By the way, I was just talking about the positive stuff of the episode.
No. But, let's talk about this stuff that we liked first, because I want to be positive. It's Doctor Who. That's the thing. Even a bad Doctor Who episode is still fun because it's Doctor Who.
True story.
And I'm always having a good time. I'm still smiling throughout this episode. And I still got some good laughs out of this. We still have great character moments.
Can we
let's continue talking about the stuff we didn't like.
The fist bump, though.
It didn't happen, did it?
Yes, it did.
The fist bump totally happened, Dave.
Dave, I was so excited to talk to you about this.
It was so wonderful.
I was watching it up to the last
amazing.
minute, so I think it happened and it didn't even resonate with me.
I rewound it and watched it again.
Yeah, this episode was a lot of me rewinding and double checking what people were saying and rewatching, because
went quickly.
Yeah, and there was all this stuff that kept coming, and you were talking about how compressing the planets was a device that they brought in and didn't do too much. They did that throughout the entire episode. The planet made people crazy. What? How we didn't see that?
We didn't see any of it.
All we saw was like it was a device to make one guy kind of slowly give out the exposition throughout the entire episode. Besides that, there's even a moment where like we're gonna have to maybe go crazy because we're gonna use this. I'm like, great, you're bringing it back, and then nothing really happens.
And then she's able to still save the day.
Yeah.
Even so, like,
and then she's like, "Oh, can I get those back? I have a headache." And then she puts it back on.
Like what I would have loved to see in that moment, particularly from the Doctor, is I would have loved to see her take it off and like I'm not going to be able to help now. I have to put my faith in that these Ucks will see the right way. They will see the right path and will help us without me. And then the Doctor is like out from that moment on, and then it becomes about her faith in people. Which is always the Doctor's main driving force, is faith in the people around her.
Imagine how like soul-crushing it would be just for even a few minutes to see the Doctor totally forget who they are.
Yeah.
Like to totally forget any of the past Doctorness that we know. And then, if it suddenly came back after she put it back, and we get to have this, like, her reliving all of her lives and all of her memories as they come flooding back, that would have been beautiful.
Yeah, so that is something that we've seen a couple times this season, and I think Chibnall's, like, getting into his, like, rhythm or whatever, but he's introduced these really cool concepts and just didn't follow through that final punch that they needed. But anyway, let's talk about the characters in this episode, like the characters and their arcs. Like you're like this one we can almost cover too quickly, but if we want to get into
fist bumping
I was gonna say
Ryan says I love you.
Yeah,
Ryan says I love you guys.
Ryan gave such a cute face after he said it too. I love you.
Don't make me say it again. He's like, you heard me the first time.
You heard it.
I liked that.
Also, I like how he brought back Granddad. It was like, I called you Granddad last episode.
Like, how could
Is
you
that enough?
leave me like this? Sorry. And I agree with them. I actually really like what they did with Graham in this episode.
Yeah.
How in the beginning when he's talking to the Doctor and he's so determined and set on killing Tim Shaw. He's like, if I run into him again, I'm absolutely killing him. And you get where he's coming from, and you also get where the Doctor's coming from. To me, I guess that must be the Doctor's faith in people, where she's allowing Graham to come along, and despite maybe her better judgment because of what he's planning, but she didn't put up too much of a fight, not as much as I was expecting.
I think that she trusted Graham still. Like, she was warning him, but she trusted that he would do the right thing. It is something that's interesting. This Doctor has not shown that full-on dark side in this season. Like, or just didn't. Yeah. Not yet, because now the season's over. But, like, we never got... You had that in, especially Tennant, especially Smith, like, and then Capaldi more so than the others. Like, you had those turns where you're just like you go from the levity of the Doctor to the darkness that is hidden in there, and I don't think we've seen that darkness from Jodie.
No, and I think that's actually I didn't mind the break from it, to be honest. This whole season, like, I thought it was kind of it was nice to see her as a member of an ensemble, a member of a group, and all about family and all about it. I feel like we do get that heaviness quite often, and it's nice to bring that out, and she could have in this episode, I suppose, but I kind of don't mind that they're stepping away from that, like, tonally this whole season.
I kind of miss it. I kind of think it adds a depth and it's like a feeling. It gives you a feeling to the episodes that I feel like, or the season that I feel like I've kind of been missing a little bit in this season. Just previous seasons, it adds, I guess a depth is a good word. It just adds a depth to it that I feel like I'm getting. You know what it is about this season for me? To me, it felt all a little bit surface level. More than I wanted. Despite some of the deeper tone or deeper, I guess, social messages they were going for. But if you look outside of that, it just, I don't know. It was missing a little something for me. It was lacking.
So off of that, I want to pose this question to both of you, and then I'll say it for the chat as well. So Dave, you keep an eye on the people in chat. 'Cause we're watching you guys and what you're saying.
We're
in
watching.
there too.
I'm not just looking at tweets.
I think that
at your chat.
for me, that comes down to the question of episodic versus serialized. Like, it comes back to that, and this is the only episode that's really had anything affected from another episode because of Tim Shaw.
Right.
So my question is because I want to give the chat a chance to answer, is just would you have preferred? Did you enjoy this completely episodic season, even with this? I would still say this is a very episodic season, if with the minor callback of Tim Shaw at the end of it as a bookend, or would you have preferred something closer to what Moffat was doing, where it was minorly serialized the last few seasons, where we had 2-parters and like a 3-parter, and it still had that sort of plot line that threaded through the episodes more and more directly tied things together across the 10 episodes. Right. So I'm curious if you guys would have preferred serialized or episodic. For me, sorry, Dave.
Do you want us to answer? I feel like this season actually was the right amount of serial that I want in a show. I tend to like super serialized shows, but I actually think they got a bit too many 2-parters, too many like 3-parters. I like having these bits, but it still had the running. I would say there was still a running theme of everything that happens in the first episode affects every single episode after that. And you saw that with mostly Graham and Ryan, and how they're talk about their loved one and their grief, and you see that process throughout every single episode. And I like that. I actually liked that kind of running through line. It was much better than a lot of other episodic shows that I've seen that just like totally don't have a character built. The characters changed in each episode. Like the relationships got closer and closer and closer. And that was enough of a serial choice for me that I was like, oh, this could be good. I don't think that was the weakness of the season. I think the season had other weaknesses because it means every episode has to be super, super strong if you're not having a serial feel to it. So I actually like it episodic, but it just puts a lot more pressure that every single episode has to be good.
I think it was also just for me, and then Xia, I want to get your thoughts on this too. For me, what I was struggling with was some of these episodes were great, but some of them also had hanging threads that we didn't answer, and that's the kind of thing that if we were doing a serialized story, I'd be totally fine with. I actually like it when threads are left hanging, because threads you can't always tie everything up in like one storyline. But when you leave those things hanging and we never get back to them, now I feel like I'm missing something, and those episodes going back feel weaker than they even did when we first watched them. A lot of these episodes had those moments, like they dropped the timeless child on us in episode 2, and I know that everybody was like, Zach, that's not going to be a thing. Like, but it was written like it was a thing. It was written by these giant psychic beings that were like reading the Doctor's mind. And in past, whenever people have been able to see into the Doctor's mind or the Doctor's true past or all these things, it's deeply important to the Doctor. And that's what I was sort of missing. When this episode started, I was very excited to see, because I saw the little circles on the Ux's cheeks, and I thought they were Time Lord symbols for a moment. And I went, oh, we're doing some Time Lord stuff here. But at the end of it, I don't know that
they were just Earthbenders.
They were Earthbenders. They were very ancient Earthbenders. Well put, Dave. Xia, so what did you think? Would you have preferred a more structured serialization?
A little bit, yes. I don't mind episodic seasons. I know that there were even some of the Matt Smith, Peter Capaldi, where it was a little bit more episodic than say like David Tennant.
Like season 10 with Bill.
Yeah. But I still would like it doesn't have to be where it's all tied together and there's one-parters and there's two-parters. I would just like maybe a thread or two of storyline, not necessarily just character building or character development. I think a lot of what was disappointing to see Tim Shaw come back in the end was that we didn't see him pop in or out of any of the other... He didn't have to be in every single one, but I would have liked to have seen maybe a little bit of something from him throughout the season to kind of make it be like at the end. Instead, in the end, it was like... oh yeah, he's been planning revenge, but I didn't feel any of it. So when it came to it, it didn't feel like it had any gravity. It was just like, oh, okay.
Well, like if Moffat had written this season, like to take it back to like what like this whole story, then all the bad guys that we encountered would have been manipulated by by Tim Shaw. Like
Right.
he would have been secretly the CEO
The big bad,
of
the entire
Kablam.
time.
Yeah,
Like,
just something like that.
And I don't think that I would particularly go for that exact choice.
No,
but I do love that's also something that I do love seeing in a Doctor Who has done in the past, like where it's like it feels like it's an episodic show and those episodes still stand alone.
Exactly.
But then they like get a bigger meaning when you get to the end and like find out this extra piece of information.
Exactly.
What is the
Bring
Dave? So
sniper
what
bots
has the
back.
chat said?
They did bring sniper bots back. I will say there was kind of a weird through line by bringing sniper bots back. Anyways, the chat has some great comments about this.
Those Halo weapons.
Yeah. Andre Drew said, I do miss serialized because it feels like it's leading up to something in the end. I wasn't mad that this season was episodic, but I hope going forward that it gets serial. While another chat from Time Lady Rose said, I want a more varied landscape instead of the flat one we got this series. Also, Morbid Encounters also wrote, I think this season is like the root of the overall Chibnall run. I think he signed for 5 years, in parentheses, like setting the groundwork in a book that will be built on its following seasons. So this is just like establishing the tone.
Laying the groundwork. Okay.
Yeah, and the characters, and now we can build off of that, and maybe it'll become more serious.
That is more of a Davies type of like storytelling where like because Tennant's years were much more episodic, but there were absolutely strings that he sort of left for himself to pull later. And maybe Chibnall's got that. Maybe we'll in another 2 years, which we're going to talk about some Doctor Who news at the end to that extent. So stick around for that.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll have a completely different viewpoint on this season. And the season's not technically over. That's the other thing. It's that weird.
According to Amazon,
it
is because you can't order. If you order the season, you don't get the New Year's.
Yeah, they've
special.
always treated
Yeah, they do
specials as their own thing.
It's like its whole own season of just all the specials.
Yeah. But so it's one of those strange things when it airs this way, where it's like, yes, this is the season finale, but come back in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Like half the time of like any other TV shows like breaks for the holidays, and we'll have another episode for you.
Yeah.
And
Did you guys get to see the commercial? For
yeah,
the next one?
yeah.
watch
They
it.
snuck it in there for you, like
Yeah, right before the end of the show. It's weird. You had to like. Anyways.
yeah.
BBC America has some weird choices with their commercial stuff.
Yeah, they do.
Interesting. I didn't get to see it.
If you listened to the show last season, you heard me go on a rant at one point because they spoiled something in that little like teaser commercial thing.
Yeah, when they go like, "Oh, the show's back." No, it isn't. I'm just kidding. We wanted you to stop fast forwarding so you can actually
And it
watch it.
spoiled the scene. Like the next scene was like
terrible.
ruined because of what they'd shown. And they still do that this season. I just learned where they were and
you
skipped
could
them.
fast
Oh
forward
yeah,
to them.
in the middle of the seasons where they show you like 10 seconds
Yeah, 10
of what's going to
seconds.
be in the next
BBC
scene, and
loves
you're like,
doing it
why
now.
would you? Anyway.
Anyway, you can tune into those old episodes to hear that rant from me. We don't need to do it again today.
Just fast forward 15 seconds, and then when it doesn't go back to commercial, rewind a second. That's what I always do.
Yep. Anyway, other things go. So we did get some nice character development, especially between with Graham more than anyone else.
Yeah.
But Graham and Ryan have had a nice build in their relationship. That has been the one like growing thread. But Yaz, to your point, like I was saying before, like something that we could talk about very quickly is Yaz's character development in this episode because there just wasn't any. She didn't. Yaz is a strong character. I think there's a lot in there, and I get the sense
Potential from that first episode, and I feel like her most character development was the first episode, even more than the episode that was technically about her family. I
Because
feel
she
like
was
that
even
was
a
a
background character in that episode.
yeah.
We learned about her family, and that was
Yeah.
great, and she had a wonderful moment with her grandmother, but that was really the story of her grandmother, not her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to see Yaz have something to play, and I wonder if it's because they were focused on the inter-character dynamics between Graham and Ryan, and because she was sort of off on her own.
Yeah,
They didn't really get to her.
And also, Grace was kind of a through line for the whole season.
Who she didn't have any strong connection to.
So she just for a lot of for me it felt through a lot of the season, especially the finale, she was just following them around. She's just running around behind them.
Yeah,
And that's kind of it.
Yeah, what I would have loved to see from her, and like, hear me out on this one, because I need to get to the end of this sentence before you judge me. I would have loved to see a romance with her and Ryan. No, hold on.
How dare
I said
you,
let me
Zach.
finish. You interrupted me, and now I sound like a jerk. No, but the reason for me, it's just because of how I like to see romances used, is that a good romance story can let characters learn more about themselves than it is about building that relationship. It's by playing off of somebody else, you are forced to be introspective if it's done the right way. And that's the only reason that I want to see, because she didn't have anyone to play off of that way. And I don't know that her and the Doctor have that relationship yet, and she and Graham certainly don't, but her and Ryan were teased with that because they were old school kid, like they were like friends in school. So I would have liked to see, and maybe it's just a platonic relationship that builds there. But if Ryan and Yaz could have like built something together that way, we could have learned a little bit more about Yaz.
Actually, I agree with you. That's a really good point, especially because then I feel like that's a really good way to also set up backstory, because we got a little bit of backstory, but there were no moments, when people are sitting there and they're having a nice talk, and it's kind of gets to where they start talking about their past, or they start talking about something that they really went through, and then you start to find out little bits about them. They didn't really do that too much with Yaz.
Yeah. Well, and this is actually, someone in the chat brings up, she didn't have anything that needed development. She's sort of more whole and untroubled than anyone else. And they probably need to add more personal conflict. I think that's actually a sign of a weak character when you have someone who's kind of fine and just like not going on. What you need to do is you need to build up issues that are there. First episode, there's a lot of seeds that are planted, and I don't think they knew what seeds they were going to focus on, because there was the seed of her and Ryan that's in the first episode. You do get that sense that ship is going to happen. It's going to set sail. But there's also her need to kind of find her own way in the police department and feeling like she's not in the loop. There's a lot of things that she actually had some character development where she needed kind of more purpose in life than being just a traffic cop sort of feel to it. And they didn't really develop that either. It's just I think they have only a limited amount of resources, and they've put it all on Graham and Ryan's relationship. And so that's why they kind of let Yaz kind of wither.
Another thing to that point as well, I noticed in previous seasons with like Clara and with Amy and Rory, they would go back to their real life, and the Doctor would constantly be coming back to what they were doing outside of just being with the Doctor. They weren't traveling with them steadily. So you also got to see glimpses of that as well. And being pulled out of their regular life. With this, they don't go home really,
and
except for once.
That could have been a really cool way to do what I was talking about without, because I looked down and I saw the chat and said no romance, and that's fine. Like I'm just a romantic guy. I like my rom-coms, and I like my romance and my Doctor Who sometimes, but playing off of, but you get the same thing if it's the people in your home world and like how you're hiding the fact that you're traveling with the Doctor or not, depending on what season and which companions you're talking about in the past. So we could have gotten that from them, but you're right. But these were the most like adventuring companions that we've had in a long time. I
actually think that maybe I think there was a lot of talk about budget this season and how the budget has been kind of going crazy. I think I remember of like that's a big reason why we might have this, why we're having this big wait and everything. And I kept thinking, I feel like one of the reasons is because the writing isn't creating like a home base. We're not even spending that much time in the TARDIS.
They haven't reused sets ever.
Yeah.
I mean, they probably reused locations by like rebuilding sets and making it look like, oh, this was the spaceship in the Bating episode.
But either
and now
way, you're
it's the
paying for a
Kablam.
completely
Yes.
flipped production and space. You're not just like, oh, we're back in Yaz's apartment, and we're gonna that set lives. We don't have to have construction people come in and redesign everything, and art directors and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, it's a traveling
new.
show now, and that's like it's an on the road show, and that's tough. That's tough for a budget often. Even though it's like I don't think it strikes me as one of the higher budget seasons, because I feel like there's seasons that are, especially like the Matt Smith season was shot in a very cinematic way that I remember feeling like it was a bit unusual. Like when they went to America, it was big wide angle lenses.
They spent their money in specific places in episodes.
Yeah. This one feels a bit more TV budget wise. As far as like production design, but it was still good. It was still a pretty good season, even if it missed its mark at points.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So, overall this season, because like I feel like we could let's put that one on hold for 1 second and talk about this episode, and then we're going to talk about just like our thoughts on the season as a whole. This episode, I kind of want to know like more about the Ux. Like, that's a really interesting species that, like, there's only 2 of them, and they only exist on 3 planets, so I guess there's 6 of them, and now
that was confusing. The math of that was very confusing.
Yeah, I was like, okay, wait, so there's 2 of them, but they exist on 3 planets. How does that work?
And they're rare because the Doctor's never met them before?
I get the sense that they are connected to the planet in a big way. The planet, which had, like, the ability to, like, affect people's brains, I think the planet was what gave them their, like, telepathic ability.
It was like a psychic planet.
Yeah, exactly. So like it's like that thing of like you're exposed to it for so long that eventually they evolved into beings that could do this. I also want to know more about the Uxes. Like, when one dies, where does the next one come from?
That's what I was going to ask. Are those that's what I was wondering as well. Are those the same 2? Do they just live forever? Is it always those Ux?
They said there's always 2. It's like a Sith Lord and an apprentice. Like,
they just like
Tim Shaw's been alive. There was that 3,407 years later.
Yeah, that too, and it was the same ones, right?
Yeah, it was the same ones.
Ux.
So they're all over 3.
They said 3, that they lived for millions of years.
Okay.
Yeah, but what was weird about that was when we first meet the Ux, she's like, you know what, 17 is old enough to Delph, the younger of the Ux. So is that 17 years, or is that
17,000 years?
Like, what is that 1,700 years? It's just weird because they say a number that we're going to assume is like, oh, he's 17 years old, and then when it jumps to 3,407, and she still looks like an older woman, and he still looks like a 17-year-old.
So how long has she been alive for?
Yeah,
before he was born, however they came about.
I do love the Doctor's line. Those last 7 probably dragged for you.
Yeah, for Tim Shaw. I do like the fact that he was like kind of stuck on that planet for 3,470 years. But the question of the Ux, I felt like he was on life support. He was full Darth Vader mode.
Yeah.
You know? So I kind of understood. The Ux were very mysterious in that way, and they were kind of this mysterious, they're these ancient earthbenders that can basically do anything, and that's how we're going to tell our story.
And also with the planet, I wanted to see more of the planet. All you saw was dead rock. Where were they living? What were they doing? Was there any vegetation? Did they have a miniature town? But just something.
Right.
This is a really interesting. I think the Ux could be really interesting. I want to know more, Chibnall. Give me more. There's one little like maybe Easter egg I want to throw out there. Crazy theory time, and I don't even know what it would necessarily affect. But when we send the planets back through. Like, we get the little crystallized, like, condensed planets, and they pop back through. We only see one, like, pop back into being, and it's a planet that appeared to have a red sky, or red ocean of some kind. It was red. Still had clouds and everything, so it wasn't like Mars. But you know what planet also has a red sky? is Gallifrey.
But Gallifrey has come back, isn't it back?
Well, but this was planets that Tim Shaw had like crunched.
Right.
So I have nothing else except red to support this theory. But do you guys think that if Tim Shaw knows anything about the Doctor and knows that she is Gallifreyan, is a Time Lord, do you think he went after Gallifrey and somehow was able to do that?
It's definitely possible. It would be cool. I would. Like
I don't
if they
even
went
know
that
what
direction.
that. I don't. Like I said,
even know what that means because Gallifrey is like where Gallifrey is right now. Its status update is so out there. I don't quite know where it is. Like, does it exist? Is it lost? Is it back? I've lost track personally, and even though I am a fan,
I'm fairly certain it exists. But they're doing a decent job hiding,
right.
And the Doctor, I don't know why, doesn't want to go back.
I would be more interested in it brought back some sort of like enemy of the Doctor that now the Doctor has to face. But I don't know what that would be because I think unless it was like the Daleks or something. But I feel like that planet's still around too because we've visited that too.
Skaro?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
I'm also curious because they did mention that in taking those planets and putting them... Okay, first of all, I'm sorry. I've got one little beef, and I've just got to get this out off my chest because it's been driving me crazy the whole episode.
Beef it up.
When she's carrying around that crystal thing with the planet in it, when she's trying to figure out what it is, it's the object, it just looked like clear plastic to me. It was supposed to be dense, but it was light, and I was like, she's just carrying around a cheap piece of plastic. I didn't believe it at all. Okay, rant over.
Yeah,
so,
it wasn't the best production design.
I was a little bit annoyed with that. I was like, They also mentioned...
The snitch of it was kind of cool.
I liked that, especially once we found out what it was in there. Yeah. I was like, oh, now I get it. It's like vibrating because it's unstable, like condensed planetoid.
So when they mention that, though, when the planet goes into that crystal and it's, this condensed tiny planet, they talk about it, Tim Shaw committing genocide. When the planet is popped back out, are the people still there?
They didn't really go into that.
They didn't go.
They didn't.
They also did they obliterate like a third of the Earth with that red ray?
Did anybody?
I'm assuming no. But what was it doing while it was like spreading that? I have questions.
Who knows?
And it is just another thing where like the people of London are like, oh my God, aliens are here. And then the next day, like, I don't know what you're talking about, man. We have never had an alien on this planet once.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah.
I always love when they do that.
Yeah, I imagine it was just making the sky like a little red or something. I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah, as for where Gallifrey is, like Time Lady Rose, I see in the chat is like, or Andre Drew's like, isn't it a pocket dimension? Time Lady Rose is like, it's still in the painting? It's not. We broke it out of there like two seasons ago.
Yeah.
We did because we went there with the general, like the bald general from the 50th who turned into a woman, and like that character that was like said that was basically established like, oh, we're gonna do a female Doctor next. Guys, get ready for that. That was on Gallifrey. Like Gallifrey is out there. It's not. It got burst out of like from its other pocket dimension.
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure.
I'm glad to see I'm not alone on like the path where Gallifrey is on the GPS right now.
It's just a question of like I'm pretty sure the Doctor like last time we established knows how to get there, but like why isn't she going?
That's why I'm like, if it came back from the little chrysalis it was in, I would be like, okay, now it's back. It doesn't. You can't use it as stakes anymore, in my opinion, because it's been used and unused so often that I'm like kind of done with Gallifrey. So I mean, and by the way, I think that's why Tim Shaw was like kind of a hit or miss with me. But I do like the idea of creating a season that really exists on its own. There was nothing in the season besides the TARDIS and the sonic screwdriver and the Doctor herself that like is from another season. And I kind of like that, to be honest.
I get why they did that. I understand why. But let's talk about this season as a whole. So you liked that about it, Xia? What did you think? Do you enjoy that like more standalone idea?
No, because I'm too obsessed with the rest of the seasons of Doctor Who, and I loved so much what they did in some of those earlier seasons. I love the Eccleston season also. I don't care what anyone says. I thought it was a great season.
It was great.
And going into season 2, 3, all the way up to I think it was season 7, was so like mind-blowingly amazing to me, and I just want some more of that back. And I feel like I'm not getting it. And there were things I liked about this season quite a bit. There were some episodes that I thought were really cool. I also kind of miss the Doctor companion relationship that we don't have in this one.
I can see that. I like the ensemble, and I kind of felt like Moffat there was points where he would bring this character from deep Doctor Who and treat it like a reveal, and I would watch it as someone who started watching at Eccleston and has continued watching, so I'm pretty well versed in my Doctor Who kind of notebook, but there was still a couple of characters that he would bring out that he would treat as like, oh no, it's this guy. And I would be like, I don't know who that is. But it's not deep into it.
But I don't know, for me, that was always handled in an interesting way where I was like, okay, I don't recognize this guy, but the Doctor does, so I'm gonna roll with it. By and large.
Right.
I was still able to enjoy that even when I didn't get the references because it was from a classic.
I guess the one specific one I'm thinking of is, and I forget his name, so all these Doctor Who fans are going to yell at me, but the Master of the Daleks, who was in that War episode. With the thing.
Yeah, you're talking.
Oh my gosh. Dalek Sect? Or, no.
No. Dalek Sect is
I'm not alone.
Dalek Sect is the from the Manhattan episode where he hybridized the two of them.
But the first scene of that was like he said his name, and then there was like
you're talking about Davros.
Yes, Davros. It said like, my name is Davros, and it wasn't like a. It was supposed to be a name. We'd go, oh, what? What? But for me, it's just I'm not that deep into the Who, so it was like.
And that was Davies who brought Davros back. It's actually Moffat.
Davies
was
is even worse at that than Moffat was. That's true.
Yeah.
But like. I kind of appreciate the season that's sort of alone. You just have to make, again, it's like the episodic thing. If you bring in a character, it has to be an amazing character, and because you're adding it to the lore, and especially if you bookend it. And Tim Shaw, a guy with teeth covering his face, and his name is Tim Shaw. Sorry.
Was a great gag. Hurts him as a recurring villain.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he
good design with a mask on though.
Yeah.
As soon as the mask comes off and he says his name is Tim Shaw, I'm out.
He just wasn't menacing either. Although I do have to say just one more thing that I loved really quickly, was when Graham shot him in the foot. And Ryan was like, dude, you shot him. And Graham was like, what? Only in the foot. Yeah. Just in the foot. Don't tell the Doctor. She's going to be pissed.
I feel like she'd be cool with shooting in the foot. That's that's called using your weapon to disarm somebody.
Yeah.
Exactly. I liked that little moment. That made me laugh.
Graham was the star of this season. I felt he was like he was so good, and his delivery of every single one of his lines was awesome.
Yeah. Oh, he was fantastic. But with that, I think the Doctor would be totally cool with shooting him in the foot. I love that the Doctor was all about explosives in this. Like, I don't want to kill anyone, but if it's gonna take down a building and something they can like put back together, I'm totally fine with it. Again, this is the Ferris Bueller Doctor. Like, totally up for mischief. Let's cause some mayhem. Let's ruin this parade. But also, let's just like be cool to each other.
I also love that she's like, don't quote it back to me. My rules change all the time. And I thought that was a great move too, especially since we just saw a whole episode with them shooting up sniper bots like crazy.
There's some news we're going to talk about, and we have to do some predictions because we're going to have another episode in 3 weeks. So like finale, quote unquote. I did a physical action for a podcast.
You said quote unquote.
Yeah. But let's real quick do some Who's Who on Who.
I really want to know.
Should we just change our soundbite trigger for this?
I mean, I enjoy singing
It's the last
it every
episode. I don't know
single
why
time.
I'm like, we should change the soundbite.
And every
Anyway,
time you start, I have to join in.
There's only two people that I really want to shout out in this episode. Jamie Childs, who
last name.
directed.
I was going to say, is he your brother? Are you guys related? Tell me.
No, everyone thinks I have the S at the end of my name. I don't.
You're just one child.
So
He has many children.
This is the cousins we don't talk about.
Directed a bunch of episodes this season, including The Woman Who Fell to Earth, the premiere, as well as It Takes You Away last week, and The Demons of Punjab. So 4 episodes out of the 10 this season went to Jamie. This episode was written by Chris Chibnall. You might know who that guy is.
Yeah, by now.
And then the obviously the big actor in this episode was Mark Addy, who played Paul Trachy.
Right.
Paul Trachy.
Whoa.
If you don't recognize him, go back to season 1 of Game of Thrones, because that is Mr. Robert Baratheon.
Oh my God, he looks so familiar.
Isn't he also Fred Flintstone? Am I crazy? From the Flintstones?
From the second Flintstones, after John Goodman left.
Yeah.
Yes, he is. Wow, Zia. I didn't even have that one on my list of things to shout out about. But yes, he did play Fred Flintstone in the Flintstones Viva Rock Vegas.
I don't know. I feel kind of ashamed that I know that.
No, it's totally fine. You've seen Mark Addy in tons of things. He's a character actor. He's been in his list of stuff is ever going. And this is his first appearance on Doctor Who.
Well, there's also Downton Abbey fans would recognize Peltrali, and I'm bringing up who she is, but she was in Mrs. Hughes in Downton Abbey. Yes, Phyllis Logan was Mrs. Hughes in Downton Abbey. So it was like a lot of Downton Abbey crossovers in this
Maybe I should
season.
watch that show.
Oh, yes, you should.
I should. Oh, okay.
It's good.
But I wanted to keep that one brief because we've got to talk about some news, some big news dropping on us. In case you guys didn't see, the BBC announced today, I think it was today actually.
Yeah, I think it was today.
That the next season of Doctor Who will not come until 2020.
Boo.
Crazy.
Boo.
We've waited an entire year.
There were a ton of rumors going around but they did also confirm that Jodie will be back.
But I'd
for
already,
that season.
I thought I'd read in previous news stories that she was going to be back for at least one more season, and then after that, they're not sure.
It's all rumor.
Right.
This is them officially saying, we're doing another season. It's not going to be for another year because we're like... basically, Chibnall is saying that production takes too long, and part of that is what happens when you don't have consistent sets and you have to build new things every week. Production does take longer. Like, that extends the entire shoot. So the rumors are that this was a major problem for the BBC, and why there was a threat of Chibnall and Jodie leaving in the first place was that BBC is as frustrated by that as the fans are. Like, they want the new season next year, like we do. Chibnall is trying to protect his creative. And it's a balance that somebody has to strike, and it's the hard. The more intense you make the show, the bigger swings you take, the longer it's going to take to make it good.
It's like Game of Thrones. How long have we had to wait for this last season?
It's the fast, easy, cheap triangle. You can't get all three.
Yeah.
I don't think it's that. We're not asking for it fast. What we're asking for, I'm really against it because I feel like they could have at least done a special midway through the year. They could announce that we're going to have like a 2-hour episode midway through the year and write something really cool there that's just kind of a made-for-TV movie. Maybe. I think that would have helped people. Waiting until 2020, I think that's dangerous, especially after they've had just another up in all the ratings this season.
Yeah. We will get one episode in 2019 because New Year's Day is technically in 2019. And speaking of that episode, I'm sorry, Steve, in the booth. Real quick predictions. It's our last episode.
Right.
And now, Your AfterBuzz.
Except when we come back in 3 weeks.
I know, right?
Or 4 because of the holiday break. Even the studio's closed.
Right.
So we did get a little teaser of this episode, and again they've like hinted at like someone that we know.
Yeah.
It was about 10 seconds long.
It's gonna be Tim Shaw again, isn't it?
No, but
No,
the way that it was set up, they did talk about like someone from the past.
It also sounds like you're bringing back the most dangerous force, which will just destroy people in its wake and never stop.
It's that they hint at the DNA of the most dangerous creature in the universe.
Which I can only think of one thing.
It's the Daleks.
Yeah.
It's got it like. It has to be the Daleks. It's how Chibnall was able to say there's no returning villains in this season, because there is none in this season. But
and it is
this isn't the season; it's the special.
Right.
So I think we're getting Daleks. That's my prediction.
I think it's about time for some Daleks.
Yeah, I would love Jodie for Jodie to deal with some Daleks. And. Obviously, you didn't get a chance to see this preview, but any predictions for the New Year's Day special?
You know what I would like to see? I would, maybe not a prediction, but I would just like to see, talking about the dark side, her coming up against the Daleks and maybe seeing a little bit of that dark side come out. I think that would be nice.
You don't have to necessarily talk about it as the dark side, just the intense side.
The intense side, yeah. Just a little bit of intensity
It's
there.
a storm, like, underneath everything.
That's how it's always referred to, the oncoming storm. I want to see Jodie's oncoming storm.
Yes.
I
know she can do it. She did it in Broadchurch, and she did it very well.
I'm looking forward to her having that moment. I have faith that she will. Faith. Bringing it back to the theme that we were talking about earlier. Yes. I have faith that she will. I have faith that this season will, especially with the finale, be looked back as good. Even great. Like there's so many great episodes in this season.
Demons
even if
of
as a
Punjab was like one of my favorite episodes of Doctor Who.
Yeah.
So
even if it wasn't as a whole our favorite, it was still really good. And I'm looking forward to more from Jodie and Chibnall next season, and also in 3 weeks. Yeah. So guys, that's gonna do it for this quote-unquote season of Doctor Who here at AfterBuzz TV. I have been your host, Zach Wilson. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at @ThatZachWilson. Check me out on our sister network, The Popcorn Talk, where I am the host of Marvel Movie News, where we break down everything Marvel. And this week we're talking about the new Avengers Endgame trailer. We're going to break that down and everything that it means. And also check out my own podcast, Ships in the Night, where we take ships from different universes and we discuss whether or not they would work together. This week we try to find love for Yoda, and do Thanos and the Grimace have a future? Find out.
I thought they were brothers. I'm Dave Child. You can find me at MrDaveChild on Twitter or DaveChild.com, because I'm Dave Child. And keep track of our Twitters, because I'm sure that's where we're going to announce when we're going to come back for that New Year's special.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Xia_Land. It's XIA_Land. Also, right after this, starting in just a few moments, I'll be on Marvel TV Weekly, where I have been instructed to not watch the Avengers trailer. So I'm going to watch it and give my reaction on the show right after this for the first time.
All right, guys,
So
stay tuned to our Twitter and follow at AfterBuzz TV for updates on when we will be doing the wrap-up for the Doctor Who New Year's Day special. It won't be that night, but we will do it within hopefully a week of it airing. And so until then, this has been the Doctor Who After Show. Thanks for geeking out with us.
Our founder, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.